So many updates in the David case. First, he's now being accused of partying after allegedly brutally killing a 14-year-old girl. We've learned he wants to look more presentable in court. Fortnite has made a big decision about the singer's presence in the video game. So a lot of updates in this case since we last covered this shocking story. We want to get into it right now with Steve Fischer, the private investigator who has been on top of this case from the very beginning. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, before we go any further, I have a Law&Crime legal alert I have to tell you about. Roblox. Roblox is under fire for allegedly not taking adequate safety measures to protect children on its platform. That's right. The popular virtual universe has millions of users who are minors, and yet players can potentially customize their avatars to hide their age and gender. This is a feature that is also possibly available to predators with bad intentions. Look, you might not even realize the dangers that Roblox can pose for your child. But look, if your child was sexually abused or assaulted or groomed by somebody they met on Roblox, you may qualify for potential compensation. Children, they may not know better, but Roblox arguably should, and our legal sponsors are seeking justice for families affected by this alleged gross negligence. Visit gamingadvocates.com to start your free, confidential case evaluation. All right, so we have more alleged details in the David case, as there was a court hearing today. We're waiting for another major court hearing this week, the preliminary hearing, which we'll talk more about. But where are we? So David is currently locked up on charges: first-degree murder, continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14, and unlawful mutilation of human remains in connection with the death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, filed by the LADA's office last week. We know that they claim that Celeste's decomposed and dismembered body was found September 8th, 2025 in the trunk of a car allegedly registered to David, real name David Anthony Burke, that this was out in LA in the Hollywood Hills. He's also facing special circumstances allegations of lying in wait, killing for financial gain, killing of a witness, using a sharp instrument with respect, again, to the murder charge. And this would carry heavier penalties like life in prison without parole, the death penalty, even though there's a moratorium on executions in California. And we learned from last week the autopsy report. The autopsy report was released, citing that Celeste's official cause of death was multiple penetrating injuries, the manner of death homicide. We did a whole sidebar with forensics examiner Dr. Mary Jabelik. If you want to check it out, you can see it. It's on Law&Crime's YouTube page. We also put the full autopsy report on our app, Law&Crime Plus, as well, if you want to watch it, if you want to see it. And now today there's a hearing. And this is described as a status conference, so kind of like a check-in before the scheduled preliminary hearing this Friday. We had a reporter in the courtroom. We're going to break down a little bit later on what happened today, what you need to know. But going back to Friday, if that date sticks for the preliminary hearing and it doesn't change, that's going to be big. Because by law, the prosecution has to present enough evidence to support the charges. It's a probable cause standard. It's a lower standard. It's a low bar. You're not trying to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, but you have to say there's sufficient evidence to support the charges. And look, this is open. The defense can challenge the evidence. It's different than a grand jury, right? A grand jury secret. It's one-sided. We learned last week that there were, 3 grand juries hearing evidence in this case, but no indictment was returned. Interesting. Again, as I spoke about with the LADA, Nathan Hochman, this could be investigative grand juries that examine evidence, but not necessarily asked to vote on an indictment, maybe. But aside from that, now we have updates in this case that we need to address since the last time we covered it. So David's physical appearance, a timeline laid out, accusations of partying after Celeste's death, changes to his relationship with the video game Fortnite. Okay, so for all that, I want to bring on private investigator Steve Fischer, who has been on the ground in LA looking into this case for months. Steve, thank you so much for taking the time, as always. First, I want to talk about, his court appearance and his physical appearance. I thought it was interesting, these requests that were made from his defense counsel, seemingly from him. What did you learn about what David requested regarding his physical appearance in court?
Well, they filed 2 motions. The one, they filed a motion for him to wear civilian clothing. Specifically, they said it would be pants and a button-down shirt. That was denied. So he will be in a prison jumpsuit unless something changes. And then his attorney filed another motion for him to get a haircut by the LA Sheriff's Department before the hearing Friday. And that was
granted.
Approved.
That was approved, right.
What I found interesting is that those are the 2 motions they filed. There was no motions to unseal the 54 search warrants. And
I want to explore that for a second about why they did that. Before I even get into that, just going back to his physical appearance, I'll just say, look, it's not unusual for criminal defendants or particularly celebrities who want to look a certain way in court, particularly if there's photographs, if there's video. But why do you think he wanted this? I mean, you've been studying him, investigating him for months. Is David somebody who cares about his appearance overall?
One thing I've always noticed, in especially like in the camera roll pictures we have for him, he wore the same things for days in a row. He didn't seem like a really hygienic guy, I guess you could say. And it's funny that he wants it now, especially since this is not televised. Cameras aren't allowed in the courtroom because of the child imagery, specifically. It won't be going forward. So it's really interesting because all there's going to be is a sketch artist. I think he's a narcissist. I think he wants to keep his persona for the people that do show up in the courtroom. I don't know. Maybe it's being driven by his attorneys, but I don't think so. I think this is him.
Let me go back to the other part that you mentioned. So you note that his team didn't file motions to unseal all of these search warrants in this case. Yeah. Talk to us about how many they are and what you know about that.
Yes, I went yesterday and I found out there's 50. I think there's 54 sealed, 55, including one that's unsealed already, which was the one for the vehicle. So actually at the last two court hearings, Beth Silverman, the prosecutor, specifically said that if we're going to do this prelim this quick, we're willing to work with them to unseal everything that's under seal, so they have this information for the preliminary. She said Beth specifically mentioned the search warrants and the grand jury transcripts, and that's when she disclosed there was 3 separate grand juries in the process that has to be done to unseal those transcripts. The judge said, "Hey, I'm on board. I agree to unseal everything. I just need the motion." No motion's been filed though. They filed the motion for the for the physical appearance, the hair and the clothes. Nothing that, at least as of that's on the docket, to unseal those things.
A couple meta questions here. Why wouldn't they? Because there's been a question about whether or not they're going to delay the preliminary hearing, yes, whether it's actually going to happen Friday. You remember they kind of put the prosecution's feet to the fire. We want 10 days. We want this preliminary hearing. We want to see what you have. I wonder if they're going to have difficulty asking for a delay, if they do, and not even having, according to you, made a motion to try to unseal them.
Yeah. So I have a feeling that, what you're saying is exactly it. I think they're probably at the last second going to say, we don't even, Your Honor, we don't have the discovery. It's I think there's going to be some pushback because at that last hearing, the judge said specifically that she was willing to make accommodations because, and I appreciate this from her. This is a high profile trial. And, if, for instance, she said that she does not do afternoon hours. She was making an exception for today, for the hearing that happened today, which is where I think this will find out for sure, not if it is going forward, but that this was not normal procedure, but she was doing it anyhow. So now if they were to come in on the 1st and say, we just didn't get the information, so how can we go forward? Because they really didn't want the information right now. I think they're going to get called out on that. I think. I would imagine today will be the day that if I had to guess, I think it's going to get continued.
Let me ask you this, 54, 55 search warrants, is that unusual? I mean, that seems like a lot. And why, how specific do you think each one was? What do you think they were for?
Well, you definitely are going to have, Apple with iCloud and his individual devices. I can tell you that he does have a lot of actual devices, a lot of phones. And then you're going to have Google and stuff like that. But there was a search warrant issued as late as April 20th, so after his arrest. And there was another one that looks like it falls on like the 5th or the 6th of April. So they were issuing search warrants right up. I think there was a total of 7 that I saw that were issued in 2026.
Do you think that's something he had on him at the time of the arrest or something at the property where he was arrested?
I think they probably had some sort of, I think that when they arrested him, they cataloged, what was there, and then they got a warrant. I mean, kind of like they did with the car originally. They went there, they verified that there was a smell in the car. They immediately got a search warrant to enter the car. Probably the same thing. And Beth alluded to that. Actually, she said that she didn't know at the time if there was going to be significance from those returns or not.
Let me ask you this: do you think that those warrants also include materials possessed by other individuals that are not David?
Certainly, I definitely think there's going to be at least cloud type of data, other Facebook account or Instagram accounts, Meta, let's call it, and iCloud. They specifically leaned into iCloud a lot. They said that there was over 10 terabytes of data from one iCloud account. So, which, listen, I can kind of see, the guy's a musician. He's probably got a ton of music, ton of video, raw video, and everything backed up there, but it's still a massive account. I've heard reports of them saying 10 terabytes of child porn. I don't think that's the case. I think it's a 10 terabyte account. Yes, I think others are wrapped up in this. I think all his inner circle people have had all their accounts subject to search warrant, probably their social media accounts, and including his management.
I'm glad you mentioned, I mean, this is something we talked about previously. Prosecutors say he was in possession of child pornography. We don't know if it was allegedly of Celeste or someone else, but that was interesting and made me wonder if there could be federal charges on the horizon for him. Real quick, if they unseal these search warrants, you, me, everyone's going to be able to see them?
We'll be able to see who they were served upon, and we'll be able to see what the return was. Not saying the data, but the return filed by the police saying we recovered, this account, data from this account, whatever. We'll see on a general basis, and we'll see who it was served upon, what they were looking for, and what the probable cause was, which is going to be the real tell in this thing, what the probable cause was to get the search warrant.
So back to the preliminary hearing, and we'll talk about it a little bit later on because at the time of this recording, we haven't had the hearing yet later today. Do you think this preliminary hearing is actually going to happen on Friday? And if it does, how much of the prosecution's case is going to be revealed? And how much evidence are they going to present of what they have against David?
Well, they just have to show enough that they have probable cause. However, I think because of the nature of the case and everything, and because some of the scrutiny that LAPD and the DA's office came under, I think that they're going to overshoot that a little bit. I think they're going to say, we've got a case here. Look what we have. And this is just what we're showing you for probable cause. Whether it happens or not, I have a feeling it probably is not. The fact that they have not filed, especially for those grand jury transcripts, because, listen, they need to know, meaning the defense needs to know what Neil Langston and Rob Morgenroth said. They have to have that information. They can't go to a pretrial without that. They have not filed anything to get those unsealed. And the judge told them a couple times she's willing to unseal it. They just need a motion. The fact that they didn't do that immediately at the courthouse, I think that they're talking a little different than the real strategy that they're going to actually explore.
Steve, something else that I thought was significant is if the DA is claiming that David killed Celeste to prevent her from coming forward and exposing his alleged illegal behavior, that he did it to protect his career, I thought it was very interesting the following, because according to Rolling Stone, Interscope Records cut ties with him before his arrest. UMG, so Universal Music Group, is working to get their clients' songs that they collaborated on with David removed from streaming platforms. According to People magazine, Fortnite is going to refund the players who made David-related purchases in the game. They released a statement saying, we hear the concerns. We have a bunch of changes we're rolling out over time. The first one will be available on Tuesday, April 28th, when anyone who purchased one of these items will be able to get an immediate self-service refund. And right now, players who request refunds for David Cosmetics via player support can be refunded. And by the way, David's song Locked and Loaded was apparently the game's first official theme song back in 2025. This is per reporting from Houston Chronicle. And to give everybody an idea, by the way, of why this is significant also, and I'm going to go back to Steve on this, David reportedly talked about how much this game meant to him. There was this Variety interview where he said, quote, Fortnite has been such a big part of my life, and it's what led me to make music in the first place. Being able to create the official anthem for Fortnite feels like a true full circle moment. Fortnite gave me a space to be creative and connect with people all over the world, and that same energy is what I wanted to put into this track. It's more than a song. It's me giving back to something that shaped my story as an artist, and even now, playing Fortnite is still my true passion. So I find this very relevant for the prosecution's case, Steve. If they're trying to say he tried to silence a witness to prevent his career from being torpedoed, look what just happened after his arrest. They might be able to use this potentially.
And listen, I think if it goes to trial, you're going to see that the way he met Celeste was through Fortnite. And that's significant. And listen, good on Fortnite. They didn't do this after a bunch of pushback. They did this, one person requested a refund and they immediately processed it, and this started the ball rolling. And good for them. Yeah, he hasn't been proven guilty yet. I know that, but they're a private company, and if there's we don't want our name attached to him whatsoever, and we're going to refund people who, good for them. And because listen, Celeste did meet him through Fortnite when she was very, very young, and then it went over to Discord. And so I appreciate they did that, and he did he used that platform to lure people, and it's obviously against their terms of service, and they didn't endorse it at all. But I'm glad that they're doing it without being asked to.
I want to talk about the timeline. So you constructed a timeline in this case, and I want to go through some of it. So tell me about what happened on the day of Celeste's alleged killing and what happened immediately after.
It's really wild to kind of see it on paper like this, and I got to give my analyst credit for putting this timeline together. On the 23rd is the day that the prosecution alleges that she was killed and lured over there and then killed. Beth Silverman seems to be saying it was the 23rd because last week
going over to his house, and she never
and she also called it the 1 year anniversary of her death last year on the 23rd. So he comes over there, and that is the day that he'd just gotten done with Coachella. He's back. He's kind of on this like rush of activity going on, and they announced that the Wither tour or Wither album's dropping, and there's going to be a tour, and pre-sale starts. So here comes the money rolling in, right? And obviously they're alleging that Celeste was threatening to stop that. Now, what I find really interesting is, and I'm not saying anybody else was involved. I'm just saying I find it interesting that this is a period of time, the 23rd, when they announced that. The next day they have a album release party and Wither tour pre-sale, and then ticket sales start, and then by the 25th he's playing in New York. His management's in town. His management, who leased the house, is in town. Don't know where they're staying, and his friends are all around. I put up pictures yesterday of them on the 24th at this party. This would be just hours after he killed her, and he's hanging out, and Neo and Asia are in the photos with him. I don't think he had a lot of downtime by himself coming off of Coachella and then all these PR events happening. And by the 25th, from the 23rd, he kills her. By the 25th, he's in New York. He has a party, album release, all this stuff happening. Who was around him? I think that's going to be really key.
Yeah, so this party, you say, is in Culver City, California. You said in your post, based on the timeline, I do not believe David was alone for more than brief periods between April 23rd and April 25th. I guess the question is, where do you think Celeste's remains were? Where was her body during this time?
I don't know. I mean, we're actively at this minute trying to find that out, really. And listen, I think that there's some nexus to downtown LA. On May 5th, when they alleged that she was unfortunately, dismembered by him, they said that happened on May 5th. There's a photo of him, that social media post that we recaptured of him at a Cinco de Mayo type event downtown late at night with a food truck. Physiology of this is that she was killed on the 21st and 23rd of April and dismembered on May 5th. She had to be refrigerated, most likely, in between. And I don't know if that means it's a warehouse downtown or some sort of facility downtown that he rented or had or whatever, but I don't believe she was kept at the house, and she wouldn't have been in the state really to dismember her to where, she was still wearing clothes and everything. And that would have been, a really tricky situation if she wasn't. So I think she was stored downtown or somewhere that had refrigeration.
These allegations are so heinous and so disturbing, but you couple it with the idea of him, allegedly partying right afterwards. And didn't he stream? Didn't you say he streamed, or was it on the 23rd or the 24th?
He streamed a performance. He did a 3-day band lab collaboration in New York City starting on the 25th, then flew home to Houston and performed there from his hometown on the 28th. And they streamed that as well. But there's no way, you can't look at the pictures of these performances except when he starts breaking down and crying, which makes you wonder if that's a little performative. But like when he's at this party, he's having the time of his life. I mean, he's on top of the world. It's all about him. It's his party. He's the belle of the ball, So he doesn't look too bothered. And I sure would like to talk to people like Neo and Asia and his management and say, what was his mindset? What was he talking about? Were you at the house that night? Because David, when they have these parties, they tend to be after parties at the house.
So I go back to something that you wrote. In your post, it's difficult to believe that no one knew anything about Celeste. Immunity may protect someone legally, but it does not shield them from public perception, especially if information was not brought forward immediately. These photos are from the April 24th party, 100 Thieves, hours after Celeste Rivas Hernandez was killed, according to prosecutors. So you and I talked about this, but I just want you to elaborate on it. You know, I asked DA Nathan Hochman in my interview on Jesse Weber Live on News Nation about whether other people will be charged. And he goes, look, it's an ongoing investigation. If people have more information come forward, he wouldn't confirm whether or not someone was given a deal or whether or not someone's cooperating. I remember he did say there's cooperating and non-cooperating witnesses potentially in the grand jury. Your thoughts on this? Again, if we're looking at the timeline, we're looking at what prosecutors are alleging. I'm wondering whether or not potential cooperating witnesses and ideas of immunity deals would even come up in a preliminary hearing.
Listen, I think 2 or 3 people know, and it's that, you know, that blunt about it. I think 2 of those people, I think Neo and Asia, just my opinion, but as an investigator and, you know, what I've seen, I think they knew things. And imagine that if you're somebody that reluctantly came forward after being, let's say, arrested or whatever, and being kind of forced your hand, like go to jail or tell your story. Imagine that you pretty much told the story, but held some back and then find out that there's been a wiretap this whole time going on. And it's like, oh God, I'm going to get caught up in this. So is Nathan Hochman saying, yeah, you know, we can't say nobody's going to be charged if they were honest and they kept to their immunity agreement? Now, he didn't say that, but I'm just saying, I'm just reading between the lines, that then they're probably okay. But if they lie to us, they're not going to be okay. And listen, that wiretap could tell a lot, you know, and if you find out that they didn't tell their whole story or they lied a little bit, then you're not covered anymore.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the wiretap, how it works, how law enforcement would be able to get that?
Yeah, so it's done a lot on, it can be done on a state level, which it was, but it's done a lot on a federal level, but they literally tap your phone. So whatever lines that they apply for, it's under like a super warrant. They're supposed to exhaust all other means first, but then they can actually intercept and listen in on all your phone calls, and they record them. And we don't know how long this wiretap was ongoing for, but I imagine a pretty long time. So anything, like you said, hey, don't put that in writing, call me, man. You know, it's all going to be recorded. And
right.
I think that's going to take up a very, very large part of the 41 terabytes of data.
When do you think her body was put in that Tesla?
After, I think probably on the night he dismembered her on May 5th, if that's the date it happened, or whenever he did dismember her. I think she was put in there probably somewhat in, you know, still in a refrigerated state. And I don't know why he didn't complete, you know, getting rid of her, or if it was just a trophy thing, or if he did it on purpose. I don't know if we'll ever get the answer to that and understand it, but I think she was put in there shortly after she was dismembered.
And again, just have to be clear, right? You said it before, he's innocent until proven guilty. These are allegations. Why do they believe May 5th is that date of their
I don't know. I think it has to be witness testimony, somebody that knew that came forward, or they have some really convincing text messages, which would just be really dumb if they did that. But going back to the very beginning of this thing, when I was talking to neighbors in that neighborhood, what they told me and what I put out there at the very beginning was the Tesla started being parked in different spots around the neighborhood where the rental house was, starting in May. And, you know, we didn't know any of this information at the time. Now we find out May is the date, and that's when he started moving around. So I think she was in there right after dismemberment.
Steve, I always appreciate you coming on. I know this is not an easy case to talk about. This should be an interesting week. We will see what happens. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And we just got word at the time of this recording, the David hearing is over today. The preliminary hearing has been moved now to May 26th. There's going to be a status conference on May 12th. We'll see what happens next. And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you next time, everybody.